I really think that Ghost of Tsushima is going to be a good contender for Game of the Year. And not because it's going to be the best game I've ever played, but because of the philosophy that the developers are taking in making this game. You see, while Western game developers are focusing on anything else other than making sure that the gameplay is enjoyable by the players, and they will make a mediocre game and then slap a disabled woman on the box. And if you complain, it's like, well, it's not a historical simulator. You got a minimap and it shows how many bullets you have in the chamber. Of course, it's fictional. Yeah, that is the mentality of the virgin Western developer. And it wasn't always this way. I remember watching a TEDx talk with a woman which worked in the comic book industry. She was one of the first women to actually work in that industry. And she was talking how she realized that every single comic book comes down to one thing. A fight. A fight between a villain and a hero. And in order for her to write better, she actually had to go to the gym and take boxing lessons because she wanted to experience what it's like to be punched, what it's like to punch someone, so that she can have better writing in her comic books. That's how Westerners used to create things that were so successful. Nowadays, it's all about sending the correct message so that the gaming press will go like, oh, that game is progressive. That is so progressive. Oh, very progressive. And when I see the developers of Ghost of Tsushima taking a completely different approach and focusing more on the player interaction and trying to get people immersed into the game, I can't help but promote this game to other people. So, in an article that the developers gave, they talk about how difficult it was to create accurate sword battles, to make it feel as if you're back in feudal Japan crossing swords with other opponents. So, they ended up focusing on the katana. And not only did they watch a lot of movies and read history books, but they also talked with sword masters and experts in order to get the right feel of how the katana would be best depicted in a video game. So they ended up focusing on three things: the speed of the katana, the sharpness of the katana, and the precision of the blade. And believe it or not, it was actually more difficult to do this than you would think, because the speed of the katana is creating an interesting problem. The blade actually moves way too fast for human beings to be able to react to. Apparently, the human reaction time, and they actually did a study on this, it takes about 0.3 seconds to respond to a visual stimulus. And no matter how simple the stimulus and the response are, apparently that's just how long the nervous system and your brain takes to figure things out. And this doesn't vary very much from person to person. So the problem is, when you're fighting the NPCs, they can just make it so that the NPC has this lag in response time. But apparently it just looked really weird. And the reason it looked weird is because a lot of people are now used to playing video games and watching different movies, and they have a twisted idea of what a sword fight should look like. So they have to balance out what a sword fight actually is with what a sword fight people think is like in order to make an enjoyable experience. And if they would make the NPCs be way too fast and not have that reaction time, then the players wouldn't be able to react properly and the game would feel unfair. So initially they tried allowing the player to attack as fast as any person would do with the katana, but the enemies would be slower to react. And what ended up happening is that the combat turned into a button mashing festival, and that's not what they were aiming for. Because they were actually aiming for more, I guess, Dark Souls type of combat, where it's slow, methodical, you have to think, and it feels very rewarding once you get it right. So what I ended up doing is that because people can't react to really fast attacks, but they can react to slow ones, they made the enemy wind up for a first attack, which would allow the player to see it coming. And then after the first attack, the enemy would continue with a flurry of blows. So if you actually manage to block the first one, you wouldn't need to react because you know the other attacks are coming. And they talk about how one enemy has like a 5-hit combo, and after you block the first combo, you know that you need to spam the block button to block the other 4 hits. Now, the second thing that they focused on was the sharpness of the blade. And the mantra of the developers was to, quote unquote, respect the katana. And the reasoning was that if this blade is incredibly fast, moving much faster than a human could react to, and it's also a very sharp weapon, then it is incredibly deadly in close combat. And the Mongols also have sharp weapons. So because of that, they want the player to feel as if any close duel between the main character and a Mongol can at any point end with the player's death. So they want to encourage people to stay focused and to concentrate if they are going to survive the fight. If you lose the focus for even a couple of seconds, then you will die. And I know a lot of people aren't into difficult games, but someone like me who started gaming since the 90s, I like a little bit of challenge because it feels so good when you've been dying over and over to an encounter, but then finally something clicks. And you go into that encounter and you do everything flawlessly and you overcome that challenge. It's a nice rush of dopamine when you finally get to do that. When you see how you improve as you're going against the boss and you can't even do 5% damage to it the first time. And after a couple of hours, not only do you manage to defeat the boss, but you barely take any damage at all because you're now so good at evading all of its attacks, at making sure that you play flawlessly. And I love games that allow you to do that. And if you're a person that doesn't, all I can say is just try it. Maybe you're a person that doesn't have patience. Maybe you're just a person that wants everything handed to you on a platter. But the moment you actually force yourself and you get past that difficult encounter, it feels so satisfying. You just want that rush of adrenaline again and again, and you're going to be hooked. Now, finally, the developers are saying that the last area that they focused on was precision. And because the katana is a weapon that rewards precision, they wanted to make sure that they avoid what other video games do poorly. Making your character not able to react properly or having an input delay. I think one of these best games would be Final Fantasy Remake. I really disliked the game because the dodge mechanic was really badly implemented. I felt I would press the button and it would take time until my player would react. And this is not something that you can find in Dark Souls, and apparently it's not something that you will find in this game. They want to allow the player to be fully in control of their character so that if you die, you know that it's your fault. You did a mistake and it's not the control's fault. It's not because of input lag or whatever. And because of this being in the game, it allows the developers to create really interesting encounters where you have several decisions to make, but you need to make the right one. This would be incredibly infuriating if the game didn't have perfect controls. But overall, the reason that I really like, and I think this game has a lot of promise, is just listening to these developers talk. It's like they're not focusing on pleasing a game journalist. They're not focusing on pushing some modern politics into their game. No, their entire focus is channeled in making the katana be the primary thing into their video game. So they really want players to feel like a swordsman in feudal Japan. That is their goal. That is their focus. And they're doing like all these tests, and they're talking with swords masters, and they're talking with various people, and they're watching all these samurai movies. Like you can see the passion. And their goal is not to send you a message. Their goal is to make sure that you enjoy the game and you get your money worth for playing this video game. So this is why I fully recommend it. From what I've seen from the trailers, the game looks great. It's really interesting. You get to play as a samurai by day and a ninja by night. And maybe I'll live stream it. I don't know, depending on how difficult it is. I don't want you guys to laugh at me in the comment section. Yeah, so let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys into the comment section.